The most powerful conversational hypnosis secret isn't what you think. In the next few minutes, I'll reveal how master therapists create invisible fields of influence instead of using isolated patterns. In part one, we explored 5 fundamental patterns that speak directly to the subconscious mind. Today, we're going deeper. Master influencers, whether therapists, negotiators, or leaders, don't use isolated techniques. They weave together immersive hypnotic environments where transformation happens naturally outside of conscious awareness. In this video, I'm demonstrating and breaking down 4 advanced conversational patterns that create quantum fields of influence, fundamentally transforming how reality is experienced within your conversations. By the end, I'll reveal the meta pattern that ties all hypnotic influence together, a principle so powerful it can transform not just individual interactions, but entire relationships and systems. This insight has helped my clients become architects of reality rather than just skilled communicators. Let's start by going over how quantum influence patterns create fields of possibility that even traditional hypnotic techniques can't access in isolation. As a hypnotherapist working with clients seeking deeper transformation, I've noticed that most who study influence hit a ceiling with technique-based approaches. After learning individual patterns like those we covered in part 1, they often still struggle to create seamless, natural influence. This is due to 3 fundamental limitations in the common approach to conversational hypnosis. First, fragmented application. Many use hypnotic patterns in isolation, unaware of how to integrate them as elements of a coherent field. This becomes mechanical and risks detection by the subconscious mind, introducing resistance. Second, conscious overanalysis. Focusing too much on implementing techniques correctly causes you to lose the natural hypnotic flow that makes them effective. Focus and attention should always be on the quality of the connection you're making, not the techniques in play. The third limitation is narrowed linear thinking, approaching influence as a cause and effect process, saying X to elicit response Y, rather than understanding it as a field phenomenon where multiple elements interact simultaneously to create an experience. Know this: true mastery of conversational hypnosis isn't about accumulating techniques. It's about creating a coherent field of influence as transformation emerges naturally, radically shifting you from doing hypnosis to being hypnotic. The advanced patterns I'm showing you work at this field level, transforming content into an entire context, creating quantum environments where possibilities emerge beyond ordinary conversation. This isn't about becoming more manipulative. In fact, these advanced patterns actually require greater ethical awareness because they're so powerful by design, creating space for authentic transformation through a shared field of consciousness. To understand advanced conversational hypnosis, let's revisit and explore 3 quantum principles governing a shared reality built through communication and consciousness. First off, the field principle. In quantum physics, particles don't exist in isolation. They emerge from and interact within fields. Similarly, communication doesn't consist of isolated exchanges, but creates and occurs within fields of shared meaning. Advanced hypnotic masters focus less on individual techniques and more on establishing fields, promoting certain kinds of experience. Although your analytical mind might find this concept abstract, another part of you already recognizes and remembers how different conversations create distinct atmospheres, where certain outcomes are more likely than others. Second, the coherence principle. Coherence occurs when waves align to amplify each other's effects. In communication, coherence happens when multiple elements of your communication, words, cadence, metaphors, and so forth, align to create a unified effect. This alignment creates resonance that the subconscious mind responds to more powerfully than any technique. Third, entanglement, where particles remain connected regardless of distance. In communication, minds become entangled through a shared attention and meaning. Advanced communicators create and maintain this entanglement, a state of rapport where consciousness becomes shared, allowing for direct influence beyond the limitations of ordinary language. An everyday example of this can be the way 2 people exchange looks based on previous conversations and inside jokes they might share. Understanding these principles reveals why pure technique-based approaches often fall short. They focus on the particles, individual patterns, rather than the field. They create fragmented effects rather than coherence, and they maintain separation rather than establishing entanglement. The key insight is this: advanced conversational hypnosis isn't about what you do to another person. It's It's about the field of possibility you create. It's not about causing specific responses, but about establishing conditions where transformation emerges naturally, from lifting someone's mood to helping a friend see their beautiful nature and qualities when they fall into a self-critical mindset due to obstacles. Here, you'll learn the skills to make your influence truly matter. Now let's dive into these 4 advanced patterns and have some fun. Nested loops are stories or ideas that are started but not immediately completed, with other content nested inside before returning to each loop in reverse order. This pattern captivates the subconscious mind by creating open cognitive loops that demand resolution. Here's how to use them. Begin a story or present an idea that creates interest. Then transition to another story or idea before completing the first. Continue this pattern with 3 to 5 loops before systematically closing each loop in reverse order. For example, you may start like this. One of my clients discovered something remarkable about influence that became her breakthrough. She realized that she was unconsciously signaling to her partner she didn't trust him despite her actions and intention. Which reminds me of a fascinating study I read on unconscious beliefs in communication. The study was based on 2 Confederates arguing in front of test subjects who had to rate their believability and answer other questions about the details of the argument, which was similar to an experiment that I did involving strawberries in my last week of hypnosis training. Before we continue, if you're finding this helpful, give us a like and consider subscribing for more insightful quantum psychology videos. After creating these open loops, you continue discussing your main topic and somewhere appropriate, complete each story in reverse order, often embedding your most important suggestions or ideas into the resolution of the middle loop, where the subconscious attention is the strongest. Nested loops are powerful because the subconscious mind seeks completion and coherence. The open loops create a state of heightened receptivity as the mind awaits for resolution. This receptivity makes suggestions embedded within the loops particularly memorable and potent. The psychology behind this is much like creating desire and anticipation through teaser content, much like TV shows and streaming content shows you sneak peeks of the next episode to keep you interested. Ethics requires that you create meaningful resolution rather than leaving people in a state of perpetual tension. The loops should ultimately deliver value and insight, not just manipulate attention. Pattern 2. Time distortion involves language that alters the subjective experience of time, creating expanded or compressed timelines that bypass the resistance of your conscious critical faculty. To distort time, employ language that stretches or compresses subjective time experience. This includes phrases like, in a moment, before you know it, as time slows down, or in that timeless space where insights emerge. For example, instead of directly suggesting someone make a decision now, applying pressure and triggering resistance, you could say, and you can take all the time you need to consider this fully, perhaps noticing how sometimes the right decision becomes clear in the moment when you make time to reflect, when moments seem to expand, allowing you to process everything you need to consider so that before you even realize it, you've already recognized what's right for you. This pattern works by disrupting normal time-bound thinking, which is often where resistance and limitation reside. By altering the subjective timeline, you create a space where possibilities can emerge outside the constraints of linear thinking. If you're working on supporting someone through a habit change, you can also alter time to focus on the current issue already being resolved using past tense language, such as, having already given up on smoking, you look back at the experience, thanking your former self for doing what's best for you, or say something along the lines of that. Ethical application of this involves using time distortion to create freedom rather than pressure, expanding the sense of possibility in their capabilities rather than manipulating them into rushed decisions. I worked with a therapist who transformed her approach to helping clients with difficult decisions by incorporating time distortion. Rather than pushing for insights within the session timeframe, she would create subjective experiences of expanded time where clients could explore options more fully. Her client experience improved tremendously, as many reported profound clarity without feeling rushed. Pattern 3. Reality frames. Reality frames are linguistic structures that establish the context in which all other communication is interpreted. They define what's possible, important, and real within a conversation, the ecosystem of what's being discussed, if you will. To use reality frames, make statements that establish the fundamental assumptions before addressing specific content. These frames typically begin with phrases like, the real issue here is, what's actually happening is this, or the truth that most people miss is. For example, rather than arguing individual points in negotiation, you might establish a reality frame by saying, the real opportunity here isn't about the specific terms we're discussing, but maintaining a relationship where we both thrive long term. When we look at it from that perspective, these flexible details take on a different meaning. This pattern works because the subconscious mind tends to accept the frame and then process all subsequent information within that context. By establishing the frame, you influence how everything else is perceived without having to wrestle each point to the ground and squeeze out every drop of leverage to quote unquote win, because you engineered a collaborative flow, anchoring into the long game. This is important for conversations that require certain focus and can easily unravel into irrelevant topics or details. The ethical application involves creating frames that enhance awareness and mutual agreement on what's important. Effective reality frames reveal genuine aspects of situations that might be undefined or overlooked, rather than distorting reality to serve only your interests. I've seen executives transform contentious meetings by skillfully establishing reality frames that shift focus from short-term conflicts to shared long-term interests or common market threats as a whole. These frames don't deny existing issues, but recontextualize them in ways that create possibilities for resolution. Which brings me back to what I was talking about when the master hypnotist demonstrated to me about conscious beliefs and suggestion. He allowed me to experiment on the other students without them being aware. I had to pick something I felt strongly about, see how effectively I could influence them. I chose food naturally, and specifically strawberries. I remember describing a dessert that I had made to impress my boyfriend, going into the experience of consuming it with visual, kinesthetic, olfactory, and taste descriptors. The following week, we were going to have a potluck celebration for the last day of our training, and at least 7 people asked me to make the dessert. The experiment I read about the Confederates in an argument had one of them believing their position and the other one not. Of course, the element of belief tipped the results, with several subjects reporting suspecting one Confederate was arguing just to counter the other one. And when asked their opinion on the matter, almost everyone sided with the Confederate who had belief. Getting back to my client with the trust issues, undermining her efforts to win over her boyfriend, we had to do some regression on where she developed the mistrust so she could be completely herself around him. I remember asking her, what if the real issue isn't whether or not people are trustworthy, but whether or not you've healed enough to be brave to take a risk? Once she saw the whole picture differently and saw that what she could gain rather than what she could lose, and that it wasn't about trusting him, but trusting herself, she improved dramatically. Pattern 4, quantum questioning, uses precisely crafted questions that don't just gather information, but actually create new realities by directing consciousness in specific ways. Unlike ordinary questions that seek information within existing frameworks, quantum questions create new frameworks by presupposing certain realities and directing attention to specific aspects of experience. For example, instead of asking, "Do you think this will work?" which invites doubt, you might ask, "What's the first benefit you'll notice when implementing this?" The latter question presupposes implementation and success while directing attention to the benefits. You can also conversely ask questions like, "Is there anything about this that presents an issue for you?" where you're looking for the answer to be no, so that you can continue the discussion with their explicit buy-in. Other examples include, how quickly will you notice these changes taking into effect? Which aspect of this solution do you find most valuable? When you look back on this decision a year from now, what will you appreciate most about having made it? These questions work by creating quantum superpositions of possibility that collapse into specific realities as the person engages. The question itself becomes a creative force rather than an information gathering tool or a leading question. The ethical application involves creating questions that expand agency rather than restricting it. As you begin working with these advanced hypnotic patterns, the most important thing to remember is that mastery of these patterns requires integration, not just application. You're not just adding techniques to your repertoire. You're leveling up your conscious communication to create new fields of possibility. As you practice, focus less on doing the patterns correctly and more on the quality of the connection in the field you're establishing. The pattern should eventually become transparent expressions of your intention rather than techniques you're consciously implementing. And as promised, I want to share the meta pattern that unifies all hypnotic influence, a principle so fundamental it transforms not just how you communicate, but how you understand reality itself. The most profound truth is this: all hypnosis is ultimately self-hypnosis occurring within a unified field of consciousness. Influencing others through conversational hypnosis isn't doing something to them from the outside. You're participating in a shared field where experience is being co-created through mutual interaction. Therefore, the ultimate source of your hypnotic power isn't technique, but your state of consciousness. The patterns we've explored are effective only to the extent they emerge from and create coherent fields of consciousness, facilitating transformation. As you fully grasp this principle, you realize that the most powerful preparation for hypnotic influence isn't rehearsing techniques, but cultivating states of consciousness that naturally generate transformative fields. Your own congruence, presence, and clarity become the foundation of your influence. This is why the most powerful hypnotic communicators often appear to be doing very little technically. Their power comes not from complex patterns, but from the coherent field they establish through deliberate consciousness. This understanding frees you from the technique trap that limits so many students of influence. You recognize that while patterns are useful vehicles, the true source of transformation is the field you establish within yourself and through interaction. As you apply the patterns we've explored in parts 1 and 2, remember that they're expressions of consciousness beyond mere linguistic techniques. Their power comes not from perfect execution, but from the congruence with which you embody them. Your influence isn't limited to the specific words or patterns. It's a whole greater than its parts, emerging from who you are in each moment and extending through the fields of consciousness you create interactively. Please share with us any insights this video sparked. And until next time, remember that beyond technique lies a quantum field of influence, where transformation happens through the nature of your presence and intention alone.